Hey, I'm Kristen Vincent. My pronouns are she and hers. I'm a spiritual director and a community partner with Neighborhood Church. This week we are considering our grief. Certainly there has been much to grieve in the last year with the pandemic and injustice and economic insecurity and environmental damage and all kinds of other things. I imagine each of us is holding both personal and communal losses. The spiritual practice I'd like to share with you today is about holding our grief. It's very common for us when we are grieving to want to try to push it away or cover it up with technology or to-do lists. Or we may just not know what to do with our grief and especially how to share it with God. So what I'm going to do today is invite you into a period of silence, and we'll start by just finding our breath the way we've done in previous weeks. Finding your breath just means paying attention to when you inhale and exhale, and that helps bring us into the present moment. And then what I'd like for you to do is to consider what you are grieving, what you have been grieving for the last days or months, for the last year or maybe years. Consider what your losses are. And then if you will take your hands and just hold them like a cup, a bowl, or a vessel. And what I'd like for you to do is to consider that you are holding your grief, that you are holding those things that you are grieving. And as you do, I want you to just hold them. Don't judge your grief as either hard or sad or bad or intolerable. Don't try to push it away. Just create space for it. Just hold it gently. Hold it lightly. And as you do, imagine that your hands are God's hands, and that who is really holding your grief is God. And so for the next minute, I'd like for you to just sit and hold your grief. You are not alone in your grief. God is with you, helping you to hold it, to create space for it. And when you can just hold space for your grief, then maybe that invites you to just be with it and to grieve. And then eventually be able to give it over to God so that it is no longer so overwhelming or tiresome. And so that eventually you can see the light and know that God is with you. Thanks be to God. Amen.
Hi, beautiful souls. My name is LeNaya Smith Crawford, and I'm a licensed therapist and holistic healer. As we approach the 1-year anniversary to the COVID-19 shutdown, I wanted to take some time to, one, extend so much empathy towards everyone who has lost someone in this pandemic, and also extend so much empathy and sympathy towards everyone who may not have lost someone, but has felt the collective grief and the collective loss that we've all felt in this year. And so the first thing that I wanted to offer was giving yourself some grace. It's been a year since we've been in this pandemic, and so a lot of us feel like it's time for us to get back to normal, right? It's time for us to not feel the grief, the pain, the hurt, the struggle that has been this year. And so I'm here to remind you that a year in a pandemic is not a long time, and that you have to extend yourself grace and to know that you will get back to that bandwidth that you had before the pandemic when it's time. But also acknowledging and accepting the fact that you might not function in the capacity that you did pre-COVID-19. And that's not to say that that's a bad thing or that something's wrong, but we're just in a new era now. We've gone through a collective experience of grief and loss, and through that came awareness, it came acceptance, it came the ability for us to pull together as a collective for a common goal of healing and a common goal of love. And so the first thing that I want you to do in this moment is to extend yourself a little extra grace and understand that it's okay if you do not have the same bandwidth you did a year and a half ago. It is your journey. We're all grieving together. And I just want you to extend that extra grace to yourself. The second thing that I want to offer is beginning to engage in holistic practices that really help calm your nervous system. So we know that when we're experiencing really big emotions, in particular trauma triggers, grief, loss, anxiety, and things like that, we know that our nervous system is out of whack, right? It's not centered, it's not where it's supposed to be. And so finding practices that really help you center and ground down is really helpful, especially when you're experiencing trauma, triggers, grief, or loss. And one of the breathing exercises that I want to offer you is my signature 426 box breathing model. And so what you'll do is you'll inhale through your nose for a count of 4. You'll hold your breath for a count of 2, and then exhale slowly through your mouth for a count of 6. And so whenever you're feeling big emotions coming up, whether it's due to grief, whether it's due to trauma, whether it's due to triggers, this is a simple yet effective tool that you can use to help you balance your nervous system. And I'd like for us to try it here together. So again, we're inhaling through the nose for a count of 4, holding the breath for a count of 2, and then exhaling slowly through the mouth for a count of 6. We'll do it 3 times here together. So take a moment to get comfortable. Maybe you close your eyes if that feels safe for you. And let's just take a deep inhale through the nose, and then open mouth, sigh it out. Take a deep breath in through the nose for a count of 1, 2, 3, 4. Hold the breath for a count of 1, 2, and exhale slowly out of the mouth for 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Inhale for 1, 2, 3, 4. Hold the breath for 1, 2. Exhale slowly. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. One more on your own. Inhale. Hold. Exhale. And slowly blinking your eyes open if they were closed. So I hope that that's something you can also take with you, is that quick breathing exercise to really help you balance your nervous system and really ground down into yourself and connect with your body. The next thing I want to offer is giving yourself a moment to really feel and process these emotions. A lot of times we try to put these big emotions, especially when it's concerning trauma or grief, we like to put it in a box and then deal with it another day. And so I encourage you to take some time to really sit and feel those emotions, feel the pain, feel the grief, process the loss, and maybe you journal about it. I find that writing out our feelings on a piece of paper really helps us get out of the processing logically of the emotions into the right brain, which is the feeling of the emotions. And when we can take time to really feel and honor and process our emotions, it really has the power to allow us to heal from trauma, grief, and loss. And if you feel like the pain or the grief is too much for you to process alone, I highly encourage and highly recommend that you seek out a licensed therapist to help you along this journey of processing your grief and your loss. And then the last thing I want to offer you is an affirmation practice. And so affirmations are short and simple yet powerful phrases that we say to ourselves that have the power to shape our reality. And so you might wonder how affirmations could help in a time of grief and loss. And so affirmations are really just speaking things into existence. It's reminding ourselves of the things that we can and have the power to embody. And so in this time of grief, I find it really important to affirm and remind ourselves of what we're grateful for. I find it important to affirm and remind ourselves that we are connected to other people and we have a connection and we have a tribe. And I also find it important to remind ourselves that we are resilient, right? We are resilient. We have the power to make it through, and that each day that we can continue to honor our emotions, tap into gratitude, tap into strategies that help our nervous system balance out, that we can experience that power of resilience, and that we know that we can make it another day, and that eventually joy will come in and the sun will shine where there's been rain. And so again, affirmations are another practice that I think are helpful. And so 3 affirmations that I want you to recite to yourself right now are: I am grateful, I am connected, I am resilient. And before, I know I said that was the last thing, but another thing, and this is the last thing I'll leave you with, is engaging in a daily practice of gratitude. And I want to encourage and remind you that joy and gratitude can live where there is pain, where there is grief, where there is suffering. So many times we get so sucked into the pain of the loss, and all of that is valid. But when we are so focused on the loss and the pain, we often forget that we also can experience joy. We also can experience gratitude in this moment. And so I want you to commit to finding at least one thing that you can be grateful for each day, one thing that you can extend gratitude towards. And if you are a person who has lost someone in this pandemic, I want you to think about how you can extend gratitude to that life. What are you grateful for? The moments that you shared with that person, the talks that you had, what can you extend gratitude towards? Because I find that when we can shift to a mindset and a perspective of gratitude, it really has the power to shape our reality. It really has the power to invite joy back into those areas where grief lived. And it also has the power to help us remind ourselves that even though we're experiencing pain, grief, loss, trauma, depression, all of these heavy things, that gratitude can help us stay grounded. Gratitude can really be the answer when we are experiencing all of these big emotions. I hope that these tips and offerings were helpful for you. I encourage you to try all of these things. Maybe you break them up 1 week at a time. You try one of the strategies and really take a moment to notice. Do you notice a difference? Do you see a shift? And so again, extending so much gratitude for you, extending so much compassion and so much empathy and sympathy to everyone who has experienced this traumatic experience, this collective grief. And so with this collective grief, I also hope and pray that we can all find collective healing.